Hi, my name is Dr. Jason Miller. I'm the Chief Formulator for Green Earth Medicinals. Today I'd like to talk to you about the endocannabinoid system known as the ECS. The endocannabinoid system is a newly discovered system that has ancient roots in basically all animals in the animal kingdom. It's a cellular receptor network, and that's the important part, which is composed of three major components. The first being the cannabinoid receptors. Receptors I will define for you in detail just down the road a little bit. Number two is the cannabinoids themselves, which can be derived inside the body, endogenous cannabinoids, or from an external source, exogenous cannabinoids. And then the third component is the set of enzymes that either manufacture the cannabinoids in our body or break them down for excretion in our body. So those are the three main components. I want to go through them piece by piece, and I also want to just preface this whole thing by saying the ECS is a very complex system that we're just beginning to understand, and we're just going to simplify it here into these three basic parts just to give an overview of what it looks like, how it works, and why it's so important in the realm of cannabinoid therapy. So let's go to number one, cellular receptors. So a cellular receptor is part of what's called the cellular signaling system, okay? This is like a conversation that's happening between cells in the body and all the other organs and cells surrounding it, inside the whole body as an organ network. The cells receive information from the external environment, their external or extracellular environment, via structures, proteins, that sit on the surface of the cell membrane called receptors. Receptors have lots of different variations. They can function in many different ways. But the primary thing to understand is that a receptor receives information from an external source that is affecting that cellular receptor by interacting with it. Either it's coming close to it, it's fitting into it and changing the molecular structure of the receptor itself, or it's opening an ion channel so that ions can flood into the cell, changing the polarity, or it can create a coupling of other molecules inside the cell that then leads to a change in how the cell functions. So if you imagine it, here's a cell on the outside, there's a receptor that's sitting on top of the cell on the surface. The external substance, in this case would be a cannabinoid, would come in and affect the receptor. The receptor would then go through a conformational change that results in a system of reactions, molecular changes inside the cell called a transcription cascade. And that cascade is this stepping stones of molecular transformations that lead down to the nucleus and direct the nucleus to change the function of the cell. Tell the cell to make new proteins, to alter what it's doing, to change the way its growth pattern is. And in the case of the endocannabinoid system, these receptors and their effects are very far-reaching. They have lots of effects, everything from mood to the appetite that we have, to our temperature control, to pain and inflammation, to immunological function. The list goes on, and as we've seen in our research into the ECS in the last 25 years, this system is woven into so many other organ networks and other cellular signaling systems that it's really impossible to make it a discrete, isolated system. It has to be considered in the context of the rest of the human physiology. So that's a brief on what a cellular receptor is. Structure on the cell surface, receives information, changes the function of the cell at the nucleus, okay? So the second piece of our basic ECS overview are the cannabinoids, okay? The cannabinoids are the molecules that have a direct effect on the way that the cannabinoid receptors function, okay? And how that function affects the cell and what that does to the physiology of the body. Cannabinoids come in a couple different forms. We talked about the ones that come from the internal source, the endogenous cannabinoids. Those are made inside the body, and they are produced in response to all kinds of stimuli. It could be trauma or injury, it could be a change in mood and emotional experience, but it results in a change in the amount of cannabinoid that's available inside our bodies that then affects the ECS and then how we feel and function. Additionally, we have, most of the time we're talking about plant-based or phytocannabinoids. These are cannabis compounds, cannabinoid molecules that come from the hemp plant that then affect those same cannabinoid receptors, similar to how our endogenous cannabinoids would work. And just to step back for a moment, there are two primary endogenous cannabinoids that are associated with the ECS. Those are called anandamide and 2-AG. Those are the two simple molecules that we identified originally as the main stimulants or activators, effectors of the CB receptors, cannabinoid receptors. One thing I didn't clarify is that there are two types of cannabinoid receptors that we refer to normally. There are more than that, and we're discovering more over time. But the two primary ones are the CB1, the cannabinoid 1, and the CB2, cannabinoid 2 receptors. The CB1 receptors are located primarily throughout the neurological system, in neurological tissue throughout the body. CB2 receptors are primarily located in the immunological tissue. They're all over the body, but mostly associated with the immune tissue and immune cells, okay? So once we understand these cellular receptors receiving information in the form of cannabinoids, either from inside the body or out. And I talked about the third part of this is the actual enzyme that either generates the cannabinoids in our body to make our endogenous cannabinoids, and then the enzymes that degrade or break down the cannabinoids for their excretion from the body. The enzymes are a little bit more detailed. I'm not going to go into detail on how they work and what they are, but the basic concept is that our body has to manufacture cannabinoids when it needs them. When the body is going to send a signal to the cells to change function, it has to generate cannabinoid. Remember I said anandamide and 2-AG. Those two molecules primarily will be made in the body to stimulate appetite or change temperature or affect your mood. Then once those compounds have been released into what we would call the synapse of a nerve cell structure, those then, once they've acted on the receptor, then they have to be degraded, changed, and released so that that stimulation of the cannabinoid at the receptor doesn't just keep on going forever. We have to stop that at some point. So the body uses enzymes to degrade the cannabinoids and remove them from the synapse and stop them from signaling the receptor to change the cell function. So on the whole, the ECS is a very beautiful, elegant, ancient system. Its focus seems to be around homeostasis, basically maintaining balance in the body through many different systems. And it has a deep weave into all of the organ networks as far as we can tell. And like I said, it's an ancient system that was newly discovered, and we have a lot more to learn about it. So without going too much further, this is sort of our ECS 101. Just wanted to give you a little information and a little overview. I hope this has been helpful. Thank you so much for being here. Come back to www.greenearthmedicinals.com for more information like this. Have a great day.